What's going on? It's the RapNerd, and with Spider-Man No Way Home being upon us. I mean, I think today, is Tuesday, so in 2 days we're gonna see this joint. I figure what better time to express my love for Spider-Man 2002, the first joint in Raimi's trilogy. You know, I adore this film. I actually adore his trilogy in general. I still think Sam Raimi's trilogy has not been topped. Yes, even the third one, I love the third one too. I'm not gonna say a movie's bad just because it had a few weird choices. I still like it, and the first two Spider-Mans to me still are top tier. Not only comic book movies, but movies in general. And I always see a lot of expression for Spider-Man 2, as it should be. Great film nonetheless. But I gotta pay respect to the predecessor that was able to be a layup for Spider-Man 2, because if the first one wasn't good or great per se, you wouldn't be able to get Spider-Man 2. And personally, Spider-Man 2002 is my favorite, and I just want to go in why. Let you know off bat, this is not a video essay. This is literally me just talking about the movie free of thoughts. There's no type of list or anything. I'm just gonna spew off some thoughts about why I adore Spider-Man 2002. First thing, for me personally, I feel like this Peter is perfect. And we've heard the stories. You know, Sam Raimi, he picked Tobey because he was like, he's the best Peter. And I feel like that's such an important thing, because if you can't latch on to Peter, you're not going to be able to fully latch on to Spider-Man. You got to be able to latch on to Peter. And with Tobey's Peter, you see so much genuine, such a genuine human in him. You see the good person he is. You see the scientist, you see the intelligence, you see the hard worker, you see the guy that came from nothing, trying to build from something. Everything in line with Peter is perfect, which is something I still don't think the other films have gotten 100% there, but you see everything, even the photography. They introduce it so early on in the movie. I mean, the first time you see him at the museum, he has the camera, and it just sets up everything else from there. Like, it sets up, his arc when he goes to work with the news, Jonah, and from that point on, for the second, third movie, it carries on. It's not like something that they just kind of threw on him later in the line. It's a nice way of starting that Easter egg early that he's been into photography. I also really think it suits the best still, honestly. Like, I still think it suits the greatest, because it just, when you can see a behind the scenes picture and the suit just looks like crispy still with no added effects, it's just him in that suit. I love how the webs are like they protrude out the costume to give it more texture. I love the size of the eyes. I even like the size of his build as Spider-Man, because this iteration is based on like the Silver Bronze era, and during this period of comics, Spider-Man was a lot like, he was huskier. He was just more muscular than what we see now. I think when the 90s started to hit, mid-90s is when they started to give Spider-Man like the slimmer look, and from there on he just got like slim. And I know muscle isn't a big thing, but the physicality of this Spider-Man is way different than everyone. I mean, this is the only Spider-Man that will throw hands with you. I mean, when you watch the end battle, the end fight between him and Goblin, perfection. It's that fight in general is so intimate, so personal, so brutal. I mean, Spider-Man was throwing hands, literally scrapping with Green Goblin. We have never seen any Spider-Man do nothing on that level, and still to this day in any movie. And like I said, that third act is just fantastic, man. And it all boils down to the character of Peter Parker and being the other side of Spider-Man. And that's another thing, Peter Parker as a person is this reserved, quiet, geek, nerd who, not really gonna say much to anybody. You definitely get that. And the flip side of that is Spider-Man. That's kind of his alter ego, and he's able to jump from back and forth. And some people say like, yeah, he could have joked more, but in my opinion, Spider-Man is more of a slick talker than he is like a flat-out joker. He talks slick the whole movie, the line he said to Macho Man Randy Savage. Pretty sure people tried to cancel the movie for that, but I mean, like, it's different times. And he just has that slick talk all throughout the movie. I don't think, he could have joked more, but I don't think it's necessary for him to just be carrying on and on and on for no reason. When I think that did enough of the job anyway. So the Spider-Man and Peter Parker fantastic. William Dafoe's performance, one of the best villain performances ever. It's scary, it's menacing, the way he's able to just switch it on and off, and you see him going through this transition as the movie goes on. Like when he's coming up the elevator and his eyes are just like, you just see him like playing with each conscious, like, okay, who's fighting? Is it Norman talking or is it a goblin talking? And then he can switch that voice on so quickly. And again, I'm all over the place because I love this movie, man. Like, another character in itself is New York. Like, New York is a huge part when it comes to Spider-Man. It's a character on its own. The people, the pizza, the subways, the skyscrapers, like just walking on the street. Like, this movie encapsulates New York. And I lived up there for a year, and again, Spider-Man Peter Parker is one of the reasons why I wanted to move there, because the way it presents New York is like no other. It's his own character. You have to just be there to believe it. And Spider-Man 2002 presents it just as it is. When I went to New York and I lived up there for a little bit, it was just like that. And everything you see is, for the most part, still just like that. And yeah, it's an integral part. Even Peter's, his house where he lives in, like, you see his small house, you see that they're struggling, and again, that's a part of Peter. It's a guy who's getting out the mud, who wants to do better for himself. He's a smart kid from Queens who wants to better himself through his science, and he just wants the better for mankind, and that's what fuels his wanting to be Spider-Man. And you get it every time. You see the confliction of Peter throughout, because he's always been a loner, and not really alone. Let me also, it's a good time to chime in. His best friend Harry, the relationship in the movie is so fantastic. It feels genuine. It doesn't, even with them being on different scales of life financially, it works out perfectly. And man, like, from when they're in school to when they graduate, and you just see how they start to grow apart. You just continue to see it, when Norman Osborn is crazy, you see Harry still backing him, and you see Harry being okay with having handouts. Peter's not, the line at the dinner table, you can come work for me, Peter. No, I like to work for mine. Oh, I forgot how he said it, but he earns his own work, and I'm just like, that's something Peter would say. Like, that's just the person he is, man. Aunt May, the best Aunt May to this day still. She just so heartwarming, and there's so many there's so many factors just about her, and her having to cope with the death of Uncle Ben, and having to raise Peter. Again, it's a dynamic of wearing a mask just like Peter is. He's wearing the mask on, being Spider-Man. She has to wear a mask to act like she's okay, just to raise him. And again, Uncle Ben. Cannot forget Uncle Ben. His sacrifice. Those famous words that were pulled from that comic that he beautifully brought to life in the perfect scenario, man. Like, the writing for the movie, the dialogue, like it has that factor of, a little bit of cheesiness, but it's still serious when it needs to be to drive the point home. Just the fact that when Peter leaves him and he's like, "Stop acting like my dad. You're not him." And Ben's reaction is just like, "Damn, what can you say to that?" And it's just delivered so well before he does end up passing. And another duality, you see that he's going through rage when he tries to find his killer. And so many factors, man. The homemade suit, how he discovers his powers. Some people have a problem with the web coming out of him, but I actually think that's pretty damn cool. Like, you are Spider-Man, so that's an endless way to, like, you'll never run out of web shooters, even though it's happened in the comics where he ran out of web and he had to kind of deal with how to get around town without it. So I'm all over the place because I really, really love this movie. This is one of those movies that I watch multiple times a year. Multiple. The score, Danny Elfman, I love how it starts off small, then like it almost reminds, like when I hear it, it kind of reminds it. I get the idea of like a spider walking, and like steadily speeding up as it kicks up, per notch. And the score is immaculate. Point blank period. It's one of Danny Elfman's best scores, in my opinion. I actually associate it with any Spider-Man almost, because that's how good it is. What else can I say about this film? Goodness gracious, it is so, it's just so delightful. Like it's a comic book movie aside, like I got to give Sam Raimi his props, man, because his vision is really what makes this movie so spectacular as well. Like all the performances are great, the story and script great, but his vision for this film to me is what sets it apart from, for all three of his films, is what set it apart from not only other Spider-Man movies. This is no knock to them, but to comic book movies in general. Sam Raimi's need for making everything practical just shows here. It's one of the things that I love most about this movie is it feels real. The world is tangible. Everything feels like it's a real place because it is. Even if it's on a set, it's still a real place. Even when they use VFX, they put the CGI over a real shot that they captured on camera, and it just makes things feel more real. So are some of the VFX dated? Of course, but it still has a tangible element to it because something in the shot is real. The fighting, that's the in fight is so brutal, but it's real. You see two people going at it, two stuntmen giving it their all. On all the fights, even at the parade, when him and Spider-Man fight, it's real. It all feels real. They're in the building with the fire. It feels real. Sam Raimi just killed this. The color grading, the camera work. Come on, dog. You can't. And you got that, and then he has his elements of horror in there. His elements of mystique, like certain. What's that one scene that's like straight up horror when Norman Osborn first takes the serum, and you see the fog fill the machine, and all you hear is, and then it cuts to his face, and you just see him shaking, and his eyes are white. Like that's just stuff you don't see added to these movies these days, man. Like. And if you like the first one, he does it even more in the other one. So it's just like, oh man, like these movies are something that I watch all the time. I take notes for myself because I want to be able to craft something just as great from something that's original. And this is definitely a movie I take note on. And it just it hits home differently because as a kid, Peter Parker's story is not a story, but I guess his personality and his social relationships with people were a lot like mine. I was always a kid that kept to myself. I used to get picked on. I was called a nerd all the time. So I coined rap nerd back then. I used to hate it, but now that's just me. And he was always the loner, but he never lashed out at anybody. He just kept doing what he did, knowing he's gonna be more. And that spoke to me so much when the movie first released. Even turning the pages of the comic books, even watching the animated series on Fox Kids, like this Peter reminds me of that version because that's the one that I saw before the movie. And from the build, from the way Peter Parker is, the way Spider-Man is in that show, to me, Raimi's Spider-Man reminds me so much of that. Like it's damn near spot on. Again, if you disagree, I get it. But this movie is the perfect origin film for Spider-Man. Like if they never ever made Spider-Man movies again, I got this one and I'm cool with it. Like it's paced so well, it's structured so well. It's almost like two movies in one because you get to see him prior to having the powers, and then you get to see him getting the powers, learning the powers, and what it means to really put his powers to the test when he searches for that criminal. That's not even half. That's like almost halfway in the movie. You still got a whole other half to him learning to be a hero. And just the way they depict being a hero, through the newspaper ads flashing up and chopping him in there and swinging off. And excellent. So much storytelling that's being done within a few minutes, so you know what he's doing, you know what it is. It's so brilliantly structured. And again, once he becomes Spider-Man and people kind of know him, and Jonah blasts him even more, it's a whole different movie because now he has the Goblin to deal with. Before, he was doing all this stuff with regular criminals, and you even see a little bit of cockiness, you know, against the Goblin, like, I'm Spider-Man, you know, you must not know what it is. But he soon learns that it ain't what he thought it is, and he met somebody who could go toe to toe with him. And then from, like I said, from there, it's a different arc. Another horror thing, when Green Goblin burst in on Aunt May like that, like, and had her say her prayers, like, what? But I could keep going on. I'm 16 minutes in. I'm sorry I'm all over the place again, but there's just so many different factors about this film that I love. I've said that a number of times. That's like a broken record. And just the idea to be able to see my favorite version of Peter in No Way Home hasn't been confirmed, but we all know. Come on, we all know. You know, for that alone, I'm hyped because of just what the character did for me and still does for me. So I had to just take a step back to just show my appreciation about a movie I love to pieces. Did it for other movies. I plan to do it for more movies, and this is no different. Let me know, what are your favorite Spider-Man films down low? Do you like this one? Do you not like it? Why do you like it? Share comments, let me know. I'm all for the Raimi Spider-Man love. I'm all for it. I'm never gonna not talk about it. So anyway, thanks for watching. No Way Home is soon. I get to see it at 3 o'clock on Thursday, and best believe I'm coming up with a review. Let me know what you think. Avoid spoilers if you can, and until next time, peace.